Hey guys, this is Future Jarhead here, and I'm going to take a quick look at some of the islands in Arma 2 to give you guys kind of an idea of the scale, basically, because we're about to see the release of the alpha of Arma 3, and it's only going to be the small island from Arma 3 that they're going to include in the alpha, I believe. But I thought it'd be interesting to go over some of the stock islands in Arma and take a look at just how big they are kind of from the air, and compare that eventually with the Arma 3 maps, because from everything we've been hearing, the Arma 3 maps are absolutely massive by comparison, especially compared to this, which is the Utahs, or some, I don't know how to pronounce it, something like that. I mean, for all I know, it could be Utah or something, but, so this map is actually very, very small, especially by Arma's standards. As you can see, like, it doesn't really take much. You can see the entire island from where we are, pretty much. There's not a whole lot of space, so there's not a whole lot going on in this map. So as a result, it's not really one of my favorite maps, because it is pretty small, and as a result, there's a couple like small settlements here and there, but they're pretty small. Like, for example, the next map we'll look at, Trinaris, Trinaris has a lot more population centers and stuff like that, and they're a lot larger. There's places there that would be considered like a large town, maybe even a small city, as compared to this place, which barely even has villages, So I just kind of picked the longest route across, I guess, basically, and flew over it pretty much directly. So as you can see, it's a pretty small fucking island. It doesn't take very long to fly across it, and so now I'm gonna just take a run around the coastline to give you an idea of how kind of expansive that coast is and stuff, because both of the islands in Arma 3 will be actual islands. It's kind of become this just kind of unanimous term that we use for everything in Arma 2 now. Like, Klafgan is an island, but this is an actual island. It's the only actual island we'll be looking at, ironically, but and all the Arma 3 stuff will be islands, so I thought it'd be interesting to take a look and see the size of the coastline for this, which is an actual line, and then next on Trinaris we'll do the same thing. And Trinaris it's not an island. It has a coastline, but it's not an island, and the coastline is so much bigger. It takes so much longer to go along that coastline than it does this one. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot going on along this coastline. There's a few little, like, islands, smaller islands out from the main island, but they're so small that you couldn't really do much with them. Like, maybe they could be like an insertion point, or like maybe set up a little camp, and from there you could move out, or maybe it'd be like a little secret hiding spot for some kind of, I don't know, prototype or something, I don't know. There's a little settlement over there to the left. Again, that's one of the larger settlements, and it's not very big. Here you have like 4 buildings, basically, with a few sheds. Like, there's almost nothing going on in this map. There's not a whole lot of interesting terrain to work with, either. Here's, like, the largest population center on the map. I'll take a stop over here and kind of look around and see what's going on here, but even this is pretty small by comparison to the rest of the maps that you might see in Arma, like Trinaris or Zargabad, or some of the user-made maps, like Fallujah, which is pretty much entirely urban terrain, or Klafgan, which is really big, and it's all, mountainous terrain and stuff like that. But there's even there's much larger settlements than this thing. And there's a little pier over there. And there's a better view of this little village or hamlet or whatever you want to call it. But because of the size and kind of the limited options of this place, I don't think it's really that great of a map overall for a lot of what you get into with Arma. Some of the smaller scale stuff, it works just fine for, obviously, and if you want to do like maybe some kind of like special operations mission where it's really tight corridors and really like get in, get out, and that kind of stuff, and it's not focused on, stuff like patrols or whatever, which is more of the guys I play with. We do a lot of patrolling around on foot or mounted patrols through these very large maps. You can't do that on this map, obviously. It's so small. And to be fair, I mean, I am doing these videos to compare the size of the Arma 2 stuff to Arma 3 and just look at both the scope and what's in that size of an island. And Trinaris is a lot more detailed than this is, and has a lot more going on, and it's way, way bigger, but, so I don't want to, like, come off like I'm saying, like, oh, everything in Arma 2 is tiny compared to Arma 3, because it's not really. But at the same time, like, you look at this, and this is just really small, and the small island of Arma 3 is way, way bigger than this, which is going to be really fun to play with when the 5th rolls around. We all get to try out that alpha, which I'm really looking forward to. So here's the airbase. There's almost nothing going on. The airbase, it right now, like, I'm just on an empty map, so it looks kind of barren because there's not really much going on. You kind of have to you have to put some effort into making that airstrip look pretty, which is kind of one of the things that most of the airstrips in Arma, honestly, they're kind of like that. Which in some ways is kind of cool, but at the same time, it's kind of a hassle to have to go and kind of populate each and every one. There's a little, like, motor pool area for something. And over here, there's a little, one of these, like, I think that's the biggest island away from the primary island over there, but it's still so small you couldn't really do anything with it. And one of the cool things with, like, Chernaris, for example, it has some islands that are actually, they're still not big, but you could do something on them, you know, and in Arma 3, definitely looks like there's going to be the large map. I forget if it's like Altis or Atlas or something like that, and it's going to have like 2 large islands basically. I think there might be like some kind of land bridge that connects them. Maybe, I'm not sure about that, but I mean they are mostly separated by water, which will be pretty cool, pretty fun for trying out all that new naval stuff and that underwater stuff. You know, I want to be a Marine someday, as is probably obvious from the name of my channel, and so that amphibious stuff kind of interests me, which I'm happy that we're gonna have a really big island map. All right, so now we're gonna go check out Chernaris. All right, here we are on Chernaris, and again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct either, but this map is a lot more interesting. Again, it's another. I guess Western European kind of location, which isn't necessarily the I guess the area that I'm most interested in. I'm more interested in kind of Middle Eastern maps, but that being said, this is kind of an interesting map, and there's a lot of cool stuff on it. There's a lot going on this map because it is so much bigger than Utis, or whatever you call it. There's up here, it looks like it's kind of just a lot of forests and fields and stuff, and there's definitely plenty of that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because first of all, you know, forests are interesting for patrolling and stuff like that. They definitely give you an interesting gameplay potential, and all those fields mean there's lots of even when if you're doing a really long patrol, it kind of helps break things up. So sometimes you have to, bound across a field or something like that if there's enemy forces nearby, or it gives you something new to look at or whatever, and clearings and stuff like that. It breaks things up a little bit and gives you some more gameplay potential. Plus, all of these open fields means you can just kind of put, you can put stuff in those open fields. You can make all kinds of stuff. You can make a fob or whatever. You could even make you could probably make like a little airstrip if you really wanted to, although usually most maps have plenty of those, and so it does kind of give you options for mission makers and stuff like that. And this is a big map, so of course there's going to be a lot of open terrain, but there's also a lot of nice details in there. There's a castle, and there's a lot of large and small settlements and stuff like that. And the coastline in particular is really really well done, in my opinion. There's a lot of cool stuff along there, and a lot of potential for operations there. There's the castle there that you can see. That's a really cool place to make missions focused around or pass through, especially like if you want to do like a night mission. It's a really cool place to be. It's the middle of the night, and you can only see by the little tiny bit of moonlight that there is, and so with that, and you have to defend that position or assault that position or something like that. It's definitely a cool bit of gameplay right there. So here you can see this is a fairly small settlement for Chernaris, and already it's about the size of that larger Utis one, and there's another one right over here and stuff like that, and there's just a lot more there's just a lot more places for people to live, I guess, which makes it a little more interesting. Especially in this day and era where warfare is often performed in and around houses and stuff like that. We're not doing a lot of trench warfare anymore, so it gives a lot of potential for maybe not urban combat, but I guess, suburban combat, you know. And then there's definitely larger settlements, you know, like towns and cities that are plenty big enough for if you want to do some CQC stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, see, like over there, you can see there's a port city or town, I guess. And here's a much larger settlement than those other ones that we've been seeing. So like that, it's just a lot more interesting. And you know, patrolling through one of those tiny ones on Utis, it's not very interesting because it takes you so little time to get through it that there's not really a whole lot of risk involved. You know, once you get there, you're either going to encounter contacts or not. It's not like one of these ones where, as you're passing through, you don't know when you might get contacts. You might get contacts halfway through. You might get contacts when you're, you know, 200-300 meters down the road away from the town. So there's a lot of potential for all kinds of crazy stuff to happen that way. And that's just, it's a good way to kind of encourage a lot of different ranges to be engaging targets at and stuff like that, which is a lot more enjoyable than a lot of the UTIS stuff, which is pretty much always at a particular range. There's not a whole lot of long sight lines or that, you know, not a lot of this interesting, more intricate terrain, especially urban terrain, you know. And this is what I mean by the coastline being a little more interesting. There's all these settlements along the coastline. There's some industrial development. I don't know what that thing is, but it looks pretty cool. I've never really investigated that. And there's these the railroad that goes along most of the. I think it actually might be the entire coastline, pretty much, which is pretty interesting. And it's also useful for stuff like navigation. If you can see the railway, you can kind of find where you are on a map and stuff like that. I think it'd be cool if we could have like actual trains like running along those. I don't know. I doubt anyone's made like an add-on like that or anything, or a module or what have you. But I think it'd be kind of cool if there was just randomly trains passing or whatever. Here's another passover that there's kind of a. This is a cool little city, kind of nestled up in the hills. Be like an interesting place to defend from. You could also potentially have, you know, units that are setting up in that hill just to our left. There's just a tree farm, whatever. There's just a lot more stuff going on in this map, which is cool, and it is pretty big. You know, I considered doing a video of like just driving through one of these, but I think I'll probably just do that for the big Arma 3 map, because I think it would just be too long and it would be kind of boring to watch them do that. But at least for the Arma 3 map, it would be a little more interesting. There's one of these much larger towns, and most of the buildings, as far as I know, are not enterable, but those apartment buildings up ahead, those kind of brick apartment buildings, I believe totally are enterable, which is definitely cool. It's always fun when you've got enterable buildings. That's one of the things that Arma 3 will hopefully do a lot better than Arma 2 did, where you can actually go inside these buildings and stuff like that, or the buildings in the game.
Manual fire.
Here I'm getting kind of bored and sort of shooting and not have a really good game because yeah. I just got a little bored, I guess. But this is cool. Like that just looks like an interesting compound right there. That'd be fun to play around with. And as you can see, this is a pretty sprawling, like, suburban area, and there's a lot of potential for combat in here where, you know, like there's this little stretch of road that kind of separates these two parts of town or whatever. Maybe like this kind of richer area right here, and that could lead to some interesting combat experiences and stuff like that. And then you've got this more industrial area, which has larger buildings and some more vertical building that can lead to some good vantage points and stuff like that. And of course, there's all this railroad. No, that's the end of the railroad, but we're also nearly to the end of the coast. This is pretty much the end right here. This is also one of the cool things, because Turnarius is a little bit bigger than Utis. They have room for you know, kind of cool natural formations. So you've got kind of like these almost like terraces or something like that, these little cliffy areas and this little pond and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Like, I think this just is kind of a neat area. I don't really know what I would do with it if I were making a mission around here, but it would certainly be a cool thing just to kind of hike through or whatever, or, you know, if you're on a patrol marching to another village or something like that, it'd be cool to pass through here, something like that. Or hell, it'd be a cool place to camp. Alright, now I'm gonna fly along the coastline so you can get an idea of just how long even the coastline is. It's a pretty big map. And keep in mind, this is like... This map is about the size of the main island in Altis or Atlas or whatever. And that's an actual full island, so the coastline will be much longer than what we're about to see, because it'll be a full island and it'll go all the way around, and the island itself will be a larger landmass than the actual, you know, proper part of Trinaris, anyways. There's a cool little inlet. Again, this would be a really cool place to like insert via boat or something like that, like some kind of amphibious insertion or something like that would be really fun, or maybe even like a... It would be fun to play as like an extraction team pulling out, you know, Navy SEALs or something like that from that area. Although you wouldn't have one of their kick-ass gunboats. It'd be something cool to see in Arma 3, and those fucking boats with like all those mounted weapons on the side and stuff. Those things can lay down some serious fire. I also just think like this map is like, you know, it's kind of silly, but I think it's just kind of pretty, you know. It's just a nice thing to look at, you know, especially with all these settings turned all the way up. And I mean, I have the visibility up all the way, so you guys can kind of get a good idea of the scope. But it doesn't run great, I'll say that. But it sure looks pretty with everything turned all the way up and all the settings all maxed up. This port area is pretty interesting. It'd be fun to do something like that. There's a kind of a more distant view of that big old town there, and most of the stuff we've already seen. I probably shouldn't have come along this coastline to show all that stuff before, but oh well. You can just not pay attention to me if you want. There's like a train station or something, I guess. I don't know what that is. Big long building. This is also an interesting place, especially with the bridges there and everything like that. Like if you're doing combat around here, it's pretty interesting because there's a lot of really long sight lines, but at the same time, you could have units in those trees or something like that that have cover and could potentially avoid detection by enemy forces and stuff and flank them and stuff, which is cool. And you also have those like really big open areas of just big stretches of road and stuff like that. I definitely think the coastline would be cool for maybe basically any kind of mounted stuff, you know, where you're in a vehicle convoy of some kind. You know, just a convoy of Humvees and fuel tanker and all that kind of stuff, just rolling around along, following the coastline. I think that'd be cool. So here we're about to come up on Skaliski Island, I guess. And again, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about where the islands are actually useful in this. Like, there's an actual island off of the island. This thing almost looks like it'd be frickin' Utis. It's big enough, almost. That's probably not really anywhere near big enough, but it's big enough to do stuff on, you know. Here I am trying to be fancy and get close to these freaking rocks, and I'm really glad I didn't crash, because that would have been a bummer. There's a cool, see stuff like that. I'm excited to see stuff like that in Arma 3, where we can actually go underneath the surface of the water and explore that kind of stuff. So that should be fun. I hope that there's at least one submersible vehicle in the alpha. Although I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of submersible although I don't really know that there's going to be a whole lot of submersible vehicles overall, honestly. Can't really think of a whole lot of vehicles that would really apply. But yeah, as you can see, this is a pretty sizable island. I mean, there's not really anything going on it, but it's definitely big enough that you could make something on it. There's like a cool little hut over here or something. Yeah, there's like this little, like that kind of thing is really cool about this map, is that it's big enough that they can just kind of dot like that along. And imagine if you were you were on like a foot patrol through like the forest, and you just happened upon something like that. And there's lots of other ones on the mainland and stuff too. A lot of similar stuff to that, where it's just like some little tiny farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere, you know. And it can be fun to you know, to move through one of these towns, but just coming on one little tiny thing, and like say it's like, you know, kind of late at night, maybe you're trying to be, you know, quiet and stuff like that, and trying to get to a position without being detected by enemy forces and stuff like that. You just kind of step out of the trees, and all of a sudden you're in some guy's backyard. It'd just be kind of cool. And here's the big city. I have no idea what it's called, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to pronounce it, so it's probably for the best. But this place is pretty big. Sorry about that with the stupid chair, but yeah, this is a pretty sizable area, as you can see, which would be really good for some proper close quarter battles, and just a fun place to have like a really large scale operation where there's lots of units involved and stuff like that. And everyone's making use of this urban terrain stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot more enterable buildings here, and definitely buildings you can get on top of at the very least, which is always fun. And I don't know why my helicopter flashes like that. If anyone knows why it's doing that, and if there's a fix, that would be awesome, because I don't know why it does that. It used to do that on my old video card, just freaking constantly. It was really annoying, but that's the first time I've seen it on this video card. I do not want it to keep happening, so... Anyway. Here's a little bay here. Oh, I think this is one of the missions in like the first Arma 2 campaign. Takes place kind of in these surrounding foothills and stuff, and you come up. There's some like cliffs overlooking that area that we just passed. You lace targets for I would assume jets flying overhead or something like that. I can't really remember. There's a cool little place. That'd be fun to play around. Like, you know, this place has a lot of bigger buildings. Maybe this is like a richer part of town, you know. And again, like I really like the potential for some more vertical gameplay, because that stuff's always more fun. It just kind of just mixes things up a little bit and gives you a little more potential. And again, one of those kind of like just lonely little farmhouses out in the middle of nowhere. That stuff's kind of cool. I'm just kind of pointing stuff out just so that you guys aren't totally bored while you're watching this or something. If you want, you can just turn me off or whatever. But I just kind of like to fly around these maps, and when I make missions, I don't really have a particular place in mind. I usually just kind of have an idea of what sort of mission. Like right now, I'm working on a scout sniper mission where a scout sniper team will be inserted into Fallujah, and they'll perform some operations in and around Fallujah. And I basically just spawned a helicopter just like this and jumped in and started flying around. I don't know what that is. That's from a distance. I kind of thought that was going to be some kind of like weird Easter egg or something, but unless it's some weird language that I don't know about, well, I think it's just where buildings used to be or something. But anyways, like I was saying, I just kind of fly around these maps, especially these bigger ones. Just hop in a helicopter and look around like this at different places until I find something that kind of piques my interest, or maybe gives me some kind of inspiration for like a cool mission. You know, like I found that in Fallujah there's some rock formations away from the outskirts of town, looking in on like an industrial part of Fallujah, and so I think I'm probably going to make use of that as kind of one of the first areas that the team is operating in, and then, you know, they'll have to I don't know what they'll have to do from there. Maybe call in some artillery or something like that. But it'll be fun stuff, and it's just kind of flying around these maps and seeing what there is. And this was just kind of to give you an idea of the scale. Like, just kind of went into, basically made a T with my flight path here, just to give you an idea of how big this map is and how long it takes to travel across it. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and look forward to I forget what it's called, but it's the small island of Arma 3. You guys will be able to see that on the 5th. Hopefully I'll get that video up. Thanks.